The alien fleet arrived silently. The vast armada of Exarix ships hovered above Earth, casting long shadows across the planet as the first wave descended through the atmosphere, their engines humming with the sound of inevitable destruction beneath them. Earth had never faced a threat like this before. The governments around the world had been scrambling to prepare, but nothing could have prepared them for what was coming. Humanity's most advanced military had no real chance against an alien force that had crushed dozens of civilizations already, their ships towering over the cities, and their weapons capable of erasing entire armies with a single blast. Yet there was one thing the Exarix had overlooked, one thing they had no way of knowing. Earth had a secret, a project that had been under development for decades, buried deep within the shadow of humanity's greatest fears. And now that fear would be their strength. The Erebus had been born from the depths of desperation, a ship the size of a city, and armed with the most advanced technology Earth could muster. It was a symbol of defiance, a beacon of humanity's refusal to surrender. When the first alien wave came to attack, they found Earth not unarmed but ready. What they didn't expect was the arrival of the Erebus from the hidden launch bays of Earth's orbiting stations. It was a sight to behold, its metallic frame gleaming in the light of the distant sun, its dark hull streaked with the scars of countless tests and trials. It moved with purpose, a massive machine of war designed not just to fight, but to win. As the Exarix fleet prepared to unleash their full might on the planet, they suddenly found themselves facing something that was not part of their calculations. The Erebus was unlike anything they had ever seen, a battleship so large it seemed to fill the sky, its energy shields flaring to life as it powered up its weapon systems, sending pulses of raw energy into space. The Exarix commanders had never seen fear. They had never known what it felt like to be the one hunted. But as they watched the Erebus come to life, they began to understand that there was something different about humanity. This wasn't a species that could be wiped out with a wave of the hand. This wasn't a species that would bend or break under the weight of an invasion. The Erebus was proof of that. Humanity's greatest weapon had been unleashed, and with it came the message that Earth would not fall without a fight. The Exarix leaders debated among themselves, some of them urging for an immediate strike, while others hesitated. They could sense the shift in the air. Something had changed, and it was more than just the ship. They had seen the determination in the eyes of Earth's leaders, and they had felt the resolve of the soldiers aboard the Erebus. It was a force of nature, something that could not be easily stopped. But the Exarix were not used to being challenged. They had crushed every opponent in their path, and this small blue planet was not going to be the one to stop them. Or so they thought. They launched their first volley of missiles, a wave of destruction aimed directly at the Erebus, believing that one strike would be enough. But the ship didn't flinch. Its shields absorbed the blast effortlessly. The Exarix watched in disbelief as the ship remained intact. Their first attempt had failed. The fight was only just beginning. The Exarix fleet had never faced such resistance before. Their missiles were supposed to tear through any defense like paper, yet the Erebus stood unmoved as the blasts fizzled harmlessly against its impenetrable shields. The Exarix commanders were stunned, and as they stared in disbelief, their doubts began to grow. The Erebus was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of something far more terrifying to them. It was a declaration of humanity's will to survive and fight back. The fear began to spread among the fleet like wildfire. Whispers among the ranks of the alien forces spoke of Earth's mysterious new weapon. Some said it was built from alien technology recovered after previous encounters. Some said it was powered by something never before seen in the galaxy. The truth didn't matter. The only thing that mattered now was that the Erebus wasn't like anything the Exarix had encountered, and they couldn't afford to underestimate it any longer. The Exarix admiral tightened his grip on his command chair, glaring at the massive ship on his display. The Earthlings weren't cowering in fear like they had expected. They weren't begging for mercy. They were prepared for a fight, and that alone was enough to shift the balance of the war in ways that Exarix hadn't anticipated. Around the Erebus, the alien ships repositioned themselves and launched another volley, this time with more precision and coordination. They focused their firepower on the ship's weaponry, aiming to disable its guns before it could retaliate. But once again, their efforts were in vain. The Erebus countered with a flurry of beams from its own weapon systems, and within seconds, several Exarix ships were torn apart. The Erebus had unleashed its fury with terrifying efficiency. The rest of the fleet faltered in the face of this unexpected power, and for the first time since the invasion began, the Xyrix commanders had to acknowledge the possibility of failure. The alien forces had never been afraid before. They had conquered countless civilizations and extinguished any who dared oppose them. But something about this battle felt different. Something about humanity's resolve was shaking their confidence. They had never seen a species fight back with such unyielding determination. As the Erebus continued its assault, the fear among the Xyrix grew. Their tactics grew more erratic, and their once imposing fleet began to lose its cohesion. Within the heart of Erebus, Captain Sarah Hunter stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the view screen, watching as her ship cut through the alien fleet with ruthless efficiency. She had always believed in humanity's potential, but even she was surprised by how quickly the tides were turning. The crew of the Erebus had spent years preparing for this moment. Every drill, every test had been a step toward this fight. And now it was paying off. They weren't just surviving, they were winning. Hunter knew that this was only the beginning. The Xyrix might be reeling, but they wouldn't stop their invasion that easily. They would regroup and come back with more force. But that would be the next challenge for her and her crew. They had no intention of letting Earth fall. They would push forward with everything they had and make the Xyrix feel the true power of humanity's spirit. The battle had just begun, and the aliens had made a grave mistake underestimating Earth. The Xyrix fleet was in disarray, but they were far from defeated. As the Erebus continued to unleash hell upon them, their leaders struggled to regain control of their forces. The fear they felt was growing by the minute. Their once confident tactics now felt flawed and disjointed. The Xyrix commanders had always relied on overwhelming numbers and superior technology, but Erebus had thrown their assumptions into chaos, and they didn't know how to stop it. In a desperate attempt to regain the upper hand, they sent their elite boarding units onto the Erebus' small but highly trained squads of Xyrix soldiers known for their brutal efficiency. Their mission was clear: disable the ship from within, infiltrate the inner sanctum, and tear it apart piece by piece. The Xyrix believed that this would be their turning point, that once they sabotaged the Erebus, the battle would be theirs. But they underestimated humanity once again. As the first group of Xyrix soldiers reached the outer hull of the Erebus, they were met with an unexpected sight. Humanity had prepared for this exact moment. The crew of the Erebus was ready for combat in ways that Xyrix could never have anticipated. Small teams of Earth's finest soldiers were waiting in the shadows, using their environment to their advantage. They had been trained not just in conventional warfare, but in the art of survival. They knew how to turn every hallway, every corridor, into a weapon against any invader. The Xyrix made their way through the ship thinking they had the upper hand, but as soon as they rounded a corner, they were ambushed by human soldiers who struck fast and hard. The alien invaders were thrown into chaos. They fought back with all the strength and training they possessed, but humanity's tenacity proved too much. The humans were relentless. They didn't stop fighting. They adapted. They used every trick they had learned over the years to turn the ship into a maze of death for the Xyrix soldiers. It was a brutal contest of will, but the humans were playing for more than just victory. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very survival. Every step the Xyrix took was met with deadly force, and their numbers began to dwindle fast. The once proud elite warriors of the Xyrix had never faced an enemy like this before. Their training was built for fighting alien species with overwhelming firepower and terror, but the humans they encountered fought with a ferocity they had only heard rumors of. They fought with an unmatched intensity and a refusal to back down. The Xyrix leaders watched in horror as their soldiers were picked off one by one. They couldn't understand how this was happening. How could a primitive species be so effective in combat? What made these humans so different from the countless civilizations they had crushed over the centuries? The answer was simple. It was humanity's resolve, their sheer will to survive no matter the cost. As the Xyrix lost more and more of their forces, the fear that had started to spread began to take root deep within the heart of their fleet. They had underestimated Earth. They had underestimated the spirit of humankind. And now they were paying the price. Their invasion was slipping through their fingers, piece by piece, as the Erebus cut through their forces, and their elite soldiers were falling one by one. The tide of battle was turning again, and this time it wasn't just Earth's military that was standing firm, it was the entire human race united in the fight for survival. The Exarchs had always been accustomed to dominance. For centuries, their forces had swept through the stars, effortlessly subjugating world after world. They had seen it all: advanced civilizations, warlike species, and desperate colonies. But none had ever fought like this. None had ever fought back with the sheer, unrelenting force that Earth was now showing. As the alien elite forces fell one by one within the Erebus, the realization began to sink in. Humanity was different. The Exarchs leaders, their confidence shaken for the first time, convened in their command ship's war room. Their admiral was furious, seething with frustration as the reports of failed boarding missions continued to pour in. "What is happening?" he demanded, slamming his fist onto the control panel. "These humans are not supposed to be this resilient. How are they managing to hold us off?" His officers struggled to provide answers, offering only vague explanations about Earth's unexpected technological advancements, but none of them could explain the one thing that was crippling the Exarchs fleet: the human spirit. Meanwhile, aboard the Erebus, Captain Sarah Hunter stood firm, watching as the tide of battle continued to shift in favor of humanity. She had seen her crew fight with an intensity she had never thought possible, pushing past their physical limits and drawing on an inner strength she hadn't fully realized was there. Every human on board Erebus was fighting not just for survival, but for the survival of every man, woman, and child on Earth. The mission was clear: protect Earth at all costs. Yet despite their success so far, Hunter knew that the Exarchs would not back down easily. They would come back stronger, more determined to crush humanity's resolve. She could already feel the weight of the next battle pressing down on her shoulders. But as she gazed at the view screen, seeing the disarray among the alien fleet, something unexpected happened. A deep, gut-wrenching fear began to spread throughout the ranks of the Exarchs. It wasn't just the power of Erebus that had them rattled. It was the realization that the humans they had underestimated were not going to give up. They weren't just defending their planet. They were fighting for something far more important, something that Exarchs had never truly understood: home. On the ground, the humans who had been deployed to secure Earth's cities against any potential invasion were also beginning to see the shift. The atmosphere was charged with energy, not from the Exarchs, but from the people themselves. In every street, every town, and every city, the battle was turning into something greater than a military campaign. It was a movement. Ordinary civilians began to rally, showing up at military barricades, offering supplies and support, standing tall in the face of overwhelming odds. Human beings had come together as never before. The news was filled with stories of brave citizens fighting back, showing the invaders that Earth was not a world to be trifled with. Their spirit was infectious. Across the globe, people who had once felt small, insignificant, and helpless suddenly found themselves empowered by something they couldn't name. The Exarchs, for the first time in their history, found themselves outmatched, not by technology, but by the will of a species that refused to be broken. The fear that had started to build within their commanders turned into a realization. They were not facing just a war. They were facing a battle for survival against a species that would not back down. The Erebus continued its assault on the Exarchs forces, cutting through their ranks with devastating precision. It wasn't just the ship's weapons doing the damage. It was the humans behind them, fueled by something that Exarchs could never understand: hope. With each passing hour, the realization became clear. The Exarchs might have come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but they were leaving with the unmistakable taste of defeat. And the humans, they weren't done yet. As the battle raged on, the Exarchs commanders began to realize the true extent of their mistake. The human spirit, something they had dismissed as a mere nuisance, was now proving to be their greatest adversary. The Erebus continued to cut through their ships with devastating precision, and every wave of elite troops they sent to infiltrate the battleship was met with ruthless opposition. The Xyrics, once confident in their overwhelming technological superiority, were now on the defensive. Their fear was palpable, a creeping realization that their grand invasion of Earth was slipping through their fingers. But even as their forces dwindled and their morale faltered, the Xyrics were not yet defeated. Desperate to regain the upper hand, the alien commanders launched a bold and dangerous counterattack. They knew their only chance at victory was to board the Erebus and disable it from within. This time, they sent in their most feared operatives, special forces trained in sabotage and infiltration. These elite Xyrics warriors were equipped with cloaking technology and devastating weaponry, capable of slipping through the most secure defenses undetected. Aboard the Erebus, Captain Sarah Hunter knew that the situation was growing increasingly dire. The ship's systems had been holding strong, but the alien forces were relentless. Hunter's mind raced as she formulated a plan. There was no room for hesitation. The fate of Earth depended on their ability to repel these invaders. She activated the emergency lockdown protocols, sealing off the most critical sections of the ship, but she knew that wouldn't be enough. The Xyrics were experts at getting under the skin of their enemies, and they would stop at nothing to bring the Erebus down. With time running out, Hunter made a bold decision. She ordered the deployment of Earth's special forces, highly trained soldiers who had been preparing for this exact scenario. These soldiers were not just trained in combat. They were experts in tactics, survival, and using their environment to their advantage. They had learned how to turn any location into a battlefield, and now it was time to put that knowledge to the test. The Xyrics infiltrators made their move, slipping into the lower levels of the Erebus with silent precision. But as they moved through the dark corridors, they quickly realized that things weren't going according to plan. Earth's soldiers were everywhere, blending into the shadows, anticipating their every move. The Xyrics might have the advantage in technology, but the humans had something they couldn't replicate: resourcefulness and adaptability. The first Xyrics operative to cross paths with a human soldier didn't stand a chance. The Earth soldier moved with lightning speed, using his environment to trap the intruder in a dead end. The Xyrics warrior was skilled, but he was unprepared for the savagery and ingenuity of the human soldier. Within moments, he was incapacitated. The rest of the Xyrics operatives were no better off. One by one, they were ambushed, trapped, and neutralized in ways that the Xyrics had never anticipated. The tide was turning once more. With each Xyrics warrior that fell, the human crew of the Erebus grew more confident, more united. The Xyrics, who had come to Earth expecting to crush an unprepared civilization, were now being hunted in the very ship they had hoped to use to destroy humanity. The fear that had plagued their forces deepened as they realized that the battle was no longer about technological superiority. It was about something much more dangerous: the unwavering will of a species fighting for survival. And still, the Erebus moved forward, its weapons locked and loaded, its crew prepared to finish the fight. The Xyrics might have been experts in war, but they were not prepared for the unstoppable force that was humanity. Earth wasn't just fighting for its future, it was fighting to prove that no one could ever again underestimate them. The Xyrics were learning the hard way that humanity's fight had only just begun. As the battle on the Erebus reached a boiling point, the Xyrics fleet began to show signs of instability. Their once cohesive formation was now a disorganized mess, ships retreating and regrouping, scrambling to keep up with the relentless assault from the humans. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the Xyrics had never encountered such fierce resistance. The Erebus had not only withstood their initial barrage, but had pushed back harder than any opponent they had ever faced. It wasn't just the human soldiers aboard that were making the difference. It was the very essence of humanity's willpower that had turned the tide. Inside the Erebus, Captain Sarah Hunter surveyed the carnage unfolding on her tactical display. The ship's sensors were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of Xyrics ships in retreat, but Hunter's focus remained sharp. She knew that the next phase of the battle was crucial. The Xyrix commanders were regrouping, and it was only a matter of time before they launched another counterattack. If they weren't stopped, it could be disastrous for Earth. With a calculated calm, Hunter gave the order to launch a targeted offensive, a strike aimed directly at the heart of the Xyrix command ship. If they could cripple their leadership, it could shatter the entire invasion force. The crew worked in synchronized harmony, each member playing their part with flawless precision. The Erebus powered up its massive weapon systems, and in a matter of moments, a concentrated barrage of energy beams shot from the ship's cannons, striking the Xyrix command vessel with devastating force. The alien flagship shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering as they struggled to absorb the blows. But the Erebus was relentless, and the Xyrix were unprepared for the sheer power of the human warship. Within moments, the alien flagship began to break apart, sections of its hull buckling under the pressure of the attack. Explosions ripped through the ship's lower decks, and the once proud command vessel was engulfed in a fireball of destruction. The Xyrix commanders aboard the ship barely had time to react, as their fleet's central hub was torn asunder in an instant. The blow was devastating, and the effects rippled throughout the entire Xyrix armada. The remaining Xyrix forces, now leaderless and reeling from the destruction of their flagship, faltered. There was chaos in their ranks, and the retreat began. Panic spread through the fleet as the realization dawned on the alien invaders. They had lost their advantage. The humans had proven to be far more resilient, far more resourceful than they had ever anticipated. The Xyrix had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but instead they were facing the full brunt of humanity's resolve. But the Xyrix were not a species to give up easily. Even as their fleet broke apart, they sent out distress signals to their reinforcements, hoping to rally support from the far reaches of their empire. However, it was clear that the once unified Xyrix forces were beginning to collapse. The Erebus had turned the tide in humanity's favor, and now the Xyrix found themselves on the defensive, fighting to hold on to whatever they could salvage of their invasion. On Earth's surface, the news spread like wildfire. The war was far from over, but the turning point had come. The Xyrix were no longer an unstoppable force. They were vulnerable. Across the globe, humanity's fighting spirit was reignited. Citizens who had once feared the alien invasion now felt emboldened by the success of the Erebus. They knew that Earth was not going to fall without a fight. And as the Xyrix fleet scattered in disarray, the people of Earth stood together, united against the invaders. The war had shifted in humanity's favor, but it was clear that the true test was yet to come. The Xyrix may have been retreating, but they were not finished. The final battle would come soon, and Captain Hunter and the crew of the Erebus knew that their mission was far from complete. They had made their mark, but the invasion was still ongoing, and humanity was ready for whatever came next. The chaos among the Xyrix fleet was palpable. Their flagship was reduced to a smoldering ruin, and their forces were scrambling to regroup, desperately trying to salvage what little was left of their invasion. In the wake of their retreat, the Xyrix were left shaken, their pride crushed by the unexpected strength of humanity. But while the Xyrix might have faltered, Captain Sarah Hunter knew this victory was just the beginning. The Xyrix were resilient, and they wouldn't be content with simply retreating. They would regroup, rearm, and come back stronger than before. The question was not if, but when. Aboard the Erebus, the mood was tense. The crew had fought bravely and held the line, but they could feel the weight of what lay ahead. The invasion had only been stalled, not stopped. Earth was still under threat. As Hunter stood on the bridge, staring at the flickering image of the Xyrix fleet in disarray on the view screen, her mind raced through the possibilities. "We've bought time," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But we have to finish what we started. We can't let them regroup." The decision was made. It was time for the final push. The Erebus would take the fight directly to the Xyrix homeworld. Earth's forces would strike at the heart of the invasion, taking the battle to the Xyrics themselves. The battle would not just be for Earth anymore. It would be for the survival of humanity across the galaxy. If they could cripple the Xyrics homeworld, it could break the backbone of the entire Xyrics empire. But it would come at a great cost. The Xyrics had far more advanced technology than Earth's forces, and their homeworld would be heavily defended. Hunter knew the risks. She had no illusions about the odds stacked against them. But Earth had something that the Xyrics didn't: a will to survive, to fight for what they believed in. And that was the one thing the Xyrics could not understand, and therefore could never defeat. As the Erebus set its course toward the Xyrics homeworld, the crew prepared for the mission of a lifetime. Every member of the crew, from the seasoned officers to the young recruits, knew what was at stake. The soldiers on the ground had already proven their bravery, holding Earth's cities in the face of overwhelming odds. Now it was time for the Erebus to carry the fight to the heart of the Xyrics empire. The journey was long, the final approach to the Xyrics homeworld treacherous, but every moment brought them closer to their goal. In the silence of space, as they approached the outskirts of the alien system, the crew prepared their weapons, double-checked their systems, and braced for what was to come. The final battle would be unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Xyrics would throw everything they had at them, but the humans of Erebus were ready. They had already proven they could fight back, and they would continue to do so with every ounce of strength in their bodies. As they entered the atmosphere of the Xyrics homeworld, Hunter turned to her officers. "This is it," she said, her voice unwavering. "We either win, or we fight until the last of us falls. But we will never stop. We will not let them take Earth." The crew nodded in unison, a shared understanding in their eyes. This was more than just a mission. It was a fight for their future, for their planet, for their families. And they would see it through, no matter the cost. The Xyrics might have underestimated humanity once, but they would never make that mistake again. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to make its stand. The Erebus entered the atmosphere of the Xyrics homeworld, a sprawling industrial planet where the once vibrant landscapes were now marred by vast cities and endless battlefields. The very air seemed heavy with the weight of conquest, yet on board Earth's flagship, there was no hesitation. The humans aboard the Erebus were here to finish what they had started. Their fight for survival, their fight for Earth, was about to reach its climactic end. Captain Sarah Hunter stood tall on the bridge, her hands firmly placed on the control panel. She could feel the pulse of her crew, the beat of their hearts in sync with the ticking countdown to the final engagement. "Prepare for final assault," she ordered, her voice calm but carrying the weight of 1,000,000 lives in it. Her crew responded immediately, every officer and soldier working together seamlessly as the battle ahead loomed. The Xyrics fleet, still reeling from their earlier defeats, had consolidated their forces around their homeworld. Massive energy shields surrounded the planet, and their best warships formed a ring of defense around their capital city. The Xyrics knew this would be their last stand, and they had made their preparations, but they had not counted on one thing: the unrelenting spirit of humanity. "We'll breach their shield in 30 minutes, Lieutenant Aisha Tran said, glancing at the tactical screen. "Once we do, we hit them hard. No holding back." Hunter nodded. "Give them everything we've got. But be prepared. They'll have reinforcements on the way." The countdown continued as Earth's finest soldiers prepared to board strike pods, ready to engage the Xyrics forces on the ground. But as the Erebus powered its way toward the heart of the Xyrics defense, the Xyrics retaliated with all their might. Waves of enemy ships swarmed to intercept, weapons firing relentlessly, attempting to block the humans' path. The battle in space was intense, flashing bright against the black void of space, but the Erebus cut through it like a blade through paper, its cannons firing back in brilliant bursts of energy. Despite the overwhelming alien numbers, Earth's strategy was working. Their precision strikes caused widespread destruction within the Xyrics ranks. Several of their warships were destroyed in rapid succession, forcing the remaining Xyrix fleet to adjust tactics, scrambling to maintain the defensive perimeter around the planet. As the Erebus breached the shield, it felt like the very planet shuddered. Hunter's heart raced as her crew prepared to strike the final blow. This was humanity's last chance to end the threat once and for all. "We're in," Tran reported. "Engage main weapons." The Erebus unleashed its most powerful weapons in a single concentrated volley. The Xyrix planetary shield flickered, then collapsed entirely under the intense firepower. With their last line of defense gone, the Xyrix capital became vulnerable, open to attack. The battle had reached its crescendo. But the Xyrix were not finished yet. Their ultimate weapon, the last of their desperate resources, came into play. An enormous planet-destroying device, buried deep beneath the capital's surface, primed to detonate and take Earth down with them if they fell. The device would not only annihilate the Erebus, but could potentially wipe out all of Earth's remaining forces. Hunter saw the weapon's activation on the tactical map. There was no time to waste. "We're not letting them win this way," she said, her voice steady. "Deploy the strike teams. We'll disarm that bomb or die trying." The crew sprang into action. Human soldiers, armed with advanced equipment and fueled by the will to protect their home, stormed toward the core of the Xyrix capital. The air was thick with tension, each moment feeling like an eternity. The soldiers fought their way through the defenses, encountering fierce opposition, but never faltering. Their mission was clear: stop the Xyrix from taking everything. In the final moments, as the countdown to detonation neared, Earth's soldiers reached the core. With a final, desperate push, they disarmed the device, cutting the wires just seconds before it could ignite. The planet-shaking explosion that had been set to destroy everything faded into nothing. Back on the Erebus, Hunter watched the destruction of the Xyrix fleet. The battle was over. The Xyrix had lost, their empire fractured and crumbling under the weight of humanity's resistance. The survivors of the Erebus stood tall, battered but unbowed, knowing that they had saved Earth and humanity by refusing to give in. Humanity had proven something today. Against all odds, they had stood united, unbreakable and victorious. The universe would know the name Earth, and it would remember the lesson of the day. Never underestimate the heart of a species that has everything to lose. The final chapter of the war was written in the stars, and humanity's victory would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come.